let me ask you this, or better yet, to the council. Pray tell, what do we do in the event that we have snow and we don't have a vehicle that's going to be able to take care of this? What are we going to rely upon? We're not going to go out and rent a truck. We're not going to go out and contract somebody to do this. That's going to waffle our expenditure. What's council going to do? Do you have a plan?
I was under the impression that we would be okay for the remainder of this year from talking to Public Works, and that we should have a backup plan anyway, because if we get hit with a 2-foot snowstorm, even if we get another truck, we're still not going to be able to plow everything.
Well, Mr. Olson, all I can tell you is if we had a new vehicle, we would be able to do the primary area, and then you have our existing truck that would be the truck behind that would kind of do all the trimming up of the shoulders to push it all further. But the main work would be done from the center of the road, in which the newer vehicle would, of course, be able to handle that. But we're not going to have that primary vehicle now. We're going to have a secondary vehicle that's going to do a primary job. This will be real interesting.
Mayor, there's a motion and a second on the floor.
Roll call.
Yes, Mr. Dilch,
Yes.
Mr. Olson,
Yes.
Ms. Owens,
You said
Ms.
yes.
Owens, Ms. Owens,
Yes, sorry.
that's all right. Ms. Sparks,
Yes.
Mayor Benesia.
Abstain.
Okay. Engineers report.
Michael, are you with us?
Yes, I am there.
Okay, welcome
I have the
to
engineer's report.
welcome to our Zoom meeting here.
Thank you. So with the ADA improvements at City Hall, they're complete. Contractors is working on the closeout documents. And once we have those signatures and documents, we'll get forward to the city to sign and send it up to the county for final closeout. Beach and 12th, that project has been approved by the DOT. I see on the correspondence under the engineer's report, the change order letter we received and sent to the city authorizing the change order for the additional improvements and acknowledging they will pay for the guide rail. And that was part of our closeout documents that we previously sent to the DOT. The Fifth Avenue reconstruction. Just to give a little summary to address some of the comments during the public. This project was a grant that the city applied for through the NJDOT local aid project for the fiscal year of 2020. And we received a grant in the amount of $252,252. All the improvements as well as the material testing and inspection is covered by this grant. We were in the process this summer and early fall of developing the design plans. We are taking it from the dead end, which is just west of the intersection with Cape May, and we are installing 4 inches of asphalt from the dead end to the paved section that the city did about 5 or 6 years ago in front of the 2 or 3 homes at the dead end. It's going to be supplied with a 2-inch base course as well as a 2-inch surface course. In the vicinity of the drain pipes, we're going to be installing guide rail on both sides where the slope requires a guide rail protection. And we also be restoring the shoulders with erosion control matting, topsoil and seeding. There's no additional clearing that's required. The roadway, we're not widening or do anything any further than what's currently there. As part of this project, since we're located within the Pinelands, we need Pinelands approval. We've sent the design plans as well as the application and stormwater calcs to Pinelands for their review and consideration. So we're just awaiting for Pinelands review. At this time, there's no additional drainage improvements that's proposed or basins within this area. It's my belief, and through the calcs, that we're demonstrating that we do not need to provide any further drainage improvements. The project is not considered major development as defined by NJDEP. In the event that the Pinelands is going to require any further drainage improvements, through previous discussions we've had with the Pinelands, we've indicated there's really no area in this roadway to do any kind of drainage or basins, just due to the water table and, requiring to clear trees, which I think is more of a detriment. So they are entertaining the idea of maybe doing a mitigation and us utilizing the drainage basin that was installed at City Hall with the soccer complex, the fields, the walking path, and the parking area. So plans are up to Pinelands for the review. Once we have the review letter, we'll go from there, and I'll update council accordingly. And then lastly, we just received a letter from the city as well for the 2021 DOT trust fund application, and that was for the resurfacing of Maple Avenue. And the city received a grant in the amount of $230,170 for the roadway resurfacing. It's a little less than what the city had requested, but we'll do the full design to get the limits from Walker's Forge Road to when we did, I call it the phase one of Maple Avenue. Those were the limits, and we'll do the design and put it out to bid. We can obviously bid with alternates so that we can still get a portion of the project done in the event asphalt's expensive when the plan is bid. And hopefully we'll be fortunate enough to get the limits that we're proposing.
Mike, let me ask you a question. What are the specifications for what you put in for the Maple Avenue road? Is that 4 inches of asphalt or 2?
That we put in for a 2-inch resurfacing overlay. We're not proposing to mill the existing pavement. We have some measures in there for a wedge course. In the event there's areas that exceed the max allowable cross slope of 4%. And also we have some isolated base course. There's some areas where there's some heavy potholes and deterioration where we were going to isolate, remove those, put back a base course, and then resurface the entire roadway with a 2-inch surface course.
Because I heard you say earlier that the Fifth Avenue project that we're moving forward with is going to have 4 inches of asphalt. However, Maple Avenue is going to get 2 inches, but I think you've just identified what I was about ready to say, which is what's currently there right now, Mike, is a very weak area of oil and stone. There is no asphalt there, it's just oil and stone. It's been oil and stone several times over the years. It's been consistently maintained year after year, where we're just always getting very aggressive potholes that keep on happening over there. It's never going to stop until we get that road asphalted. But the reality is, maybe I'm wrong, but is that surface adequate enough to just serve as its base and only put 2 inches on top of that? Couldn't we go more? Or shouldn't we go more, is what I should say?
I mean, you could go more. The reason Fifth Avenue was 2 and 2 is because there was no, I assume, the base course there. That's just gravel. So we're putting back 2 and 2. Here, in order to get the distance that we want to achieve from the phase one of Maple down to Walker's Forge, and even with this grant, it may not cover that. So if we want to go and put 2 and 2, that those project limits are going to shrink significantly. And when we did the first portion of Maple, that was a similar design where we did a 2-inch overlay. And in some areas, you are going to get thicker pavement because you have to add the wedge course. And we do have some isolated areas where you have the serious deterioration is going to get that asphalt base course.
Okay, so we were awarded $245,000, correct?
200, just over 230.
230, I'm sorry. So we were awarded $230,000 for the Maple Avenue project. Mike, what were your figures of what you were thinking that was gonna cost to, do that project? What did you put in for it?
I don't have the spreadsheet in front of me, but I believe it was around 280, 275, somewhere in that range.
Because where I'm headed with this is, with that being said, I'm inclined to think that this road would be a prime candidate for us to be able to get a discretionary, aid to, complete the, roadway. It's almost like shaving on one side of your face and not shaving on the other. You know, it's imperative that the road would have to be, completed. Mike, what do you think? I mean, if we're gonna be doing that, do you think now would be the time? Is there any way how we could petition to the state? And I guess it would most likely be done through a discretionary application, indicating that the amount of money that we're receiving is not gonna be able to finish the roadway surface, and certainly there is some monies that are always available in discretionary, so now would be the time to, put the motion in for it, wouldn't you say, or no?
I mean, you could do that, but what they may ultimately tell you is that, you didn't receive all the funding, so make this project for 2021, call it resurfacing of Maple Avenue Phase 1, and then we could put in for a Maple Avenue Phase 2 for the discretionary.
Okay, because we've already done work on that roadway 2 times so far in resurfacing it, and we still haven't completed it. Don't hold me to it, but I think the first time it was done in 1994. Second time it was done several years later, somewhere's on or about 2007, maybe 8. And we haven't had any asphalt on that roadway since, so we've already gone through 2 phases of it. It'd be so nice to see that road completed.
Right, and they give you flexibility with the funding. I mean, once we go out there and do the design and get the topography, get the information in front of us, then we can sit down and have a discussion on how we want to do this. We want to break it up and say, let's do half the roadway and we'll add 4 inches of pavement, and then make the remaining section that we cannot complete a Phase 2. Apply for that in the discretionary, or apply for that under 2022. That's certainly an option.
Do you happen to have any records? I believe your dad was the engineer at the time when we did the second phase of Maple Avenue, and I believe it started somewhere on or about right where Maple Lake is, to where it's headed towards Route 50, where it ends there.
I can't find it. I can't find a place to reach
I would
Correct.
imagine that you should have those records on file, and I'm curious to know how thick is the roadway there?
If I recall, that was just a 2-inch overlay over top.
That was
And
a
that's
2-inch
pulled up.
overlay as well.
Right, so we just put 2 inches over top, and I believe we did have some areas of wedge course on there as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So the shoulders were beefed up a little bit to eliminate the crown, the steep crown.
Got it. All right. Well, we'll just expect to prepare for the best here. Hopefully, not prepare for the best, but hopefully we will get the best result. Expect the best and prepare for the worst.
I make a motion that we open the engineer up to Mr. Gosden's questions.
Mr. Lafferty, do we need to do that? I mean, I thought that there's one chairman.
Thank you,
here for
Mayor.
the meeting. Mr. Lafferty, is that appropriate? Doesn't the chairman run the meeting, or does now council run the meeting, and the mayor is just an accessory use?
No, the chair runs the meeting, but there's a motion to open the meeting to the public for the purposes of discussing something with the engineer.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No. How many ayes do we have here? Are there 4?
I think there were 4.
Go ahead, Mr. Gosden.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry, sir, didn't get your name at first. I believe it's Mr. Fralinger.
Yes, that's correct. It's
Oh,
Mike.
thank you. As far as the drainage, then I understood that you don't intend to make any changes, that the existing culverts that are under the road now will remain and there will be no changes there?
That's correct. We're not intending to make any changes to the drainage. The road drains. It functions as an umbrella road, and everything sheets off in both directions. And ultimately, that drains down towards the culvert pipes and out. So we're
Yes, it
maintaining
does.
the existing drainage flows.
It does flow southward. Um, Indeed. Now, you did mention, though, that that plan is contingent upon the Pinelands approving that, but that you expected to be able to use the city's drainage basin as a mitigation if they were to raise a question? Is that how I understood your comments?
That's correct. We've had some issues trying to get this road paved for several years and going back and forth with the Pinelands.
My entire time here, Mr. Fralinger, 32 years.
So we had a discussion with them that essentially the road and topography and just the natural features really do not lend itself to do any kind of stormwater management in this area. So in the event they do not accept our design, we're able to possibly utilize the upstream basin that's within the same drainage area and offset that in some sort of mitigation. And that's something that we would have to discuss with the Pineland if they complete their review and assessment of what we provided to them.
When you say upstream basin, you're referring to that basin behind City Hall.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, as it relates to stormwater, actually, there are some issues with the stormwater, Mr. Fralinger, and I spoke with the mayor about this some time ago. Seems that it got ignored. The entire east end, then, of the west side of Fifth Avenue drains into my driveway, which I just might add for you folks, I just purchased to the tune of $12,000 so I could clear up some clouds and issues that related to my driveway, so there's no question that it's my driveway now. The entire east end then of the west side of Fifth Avenue drains into my driveway and then continues down my driveway into that very spung that runs under Fifth Avenue. The reason I bring it up is that because that entire east end of the west side of Fifth Avenue drains into my driveway, it washes my driveway out continuously and has been a constant maintenance problem for the last 32 years, even when it wasn't mine. I talked with the mayor about that. Has there been any discussion about a pipe maybe being placed in front of my driveway, in front of that circle that the city has no right to, I'll point out. But before that circle, that might bring that water then beyond my driveway and then continue to flow out through that low spot down to the spung and down to that culvert and flow out under Fifth Avenue. Would that make a big difference to this project, Mr. Fralinger, if that consideration might have been made?
That's certainly something we still may be able to consider. Pinelands, the reason they're involved is that we're doing improvements under the dirt area, so they take jurisdiction. If this road was previously paved and with an asphalt surface, Pinelands wouldn't have any input or any discretion. So if you're referring to areas that were previously paved or under impervious surface, it's really not subject to their review and something we can certainly consider. These are preliminary design plans. Yeah,
Yes.
so that's something we could take a look at. I seem to recall, based upon the grant and what was awarded by the DOT, we may have some additional funds And if that's something, council would like us to look into, once we get the Pinelands approval, we still need to send the plans up to the DOT and, then go out to bid. So, the first step is getting the Pinelands to review and approve, and we'll, proceed with getting, the DOT to sign off and going out to bid.
So,
I'd like to listen, we're past 5 minutes of questioning here. We can go on for the next couple more hours asking, engineer questions.
I had a couple
This is your
more
last
quick
question,
questions.
Kevin.
So
One
your
last
perception as to when this might start, Mr. Fralinger? And when it might end?
I anticipate this starting, at the best case, in the springtime, hopefully, no later than the summertime. And with this type of roadway, it shouldn't be any more than, 2 to 3 weeks for the contractor to complete this work. And that's being generous and taking in consideration, rain days and, getting crews to mobilize. But that's just to give you an idea. Probably when we bid this, it's probably going to be a 30-day completion period for this type of project.
I say, thank you, Mr. Fralinger. Thank you, Mayor.
Sure. Thank you. Moving down the line here, Mike, you may want to hold on for a little while. As a matter of fact, I want to go to, on our agenda here, the campground treatment approval. You and I had this conversation on the phone, and it appears that they're looking to have some review of what they're doing over there. I'm not going to swear that I'm certain that they're asking our city to review this. But if that is the case, the way that I have seen this, and you're shaking your head, Judd, as
I'm
if,
just agreeing.
okay. But if that is the case, I don't understand why our city would have to be responsible for any billing that would be incurred because we have to review someone who is doing some work on their property. I think it should be incumbent that the campground people should be responsible 100% for any inspections that have to be done. And maybe this could be a call for an ordinance. But actually, I thought we already did have an ordinance that in the event that there's any engineering or something like that that has to be conducted, that, the applicant, such as, well, we had South Jersey Gas doing some road work and they needed to have some approval. They're responsible for the billing. But I just don't want to be responsible for people who need to have municipal oversight, and we should not have to pay for that. That should be the person who was requesting the oversight. Randy, do you want to elaborate on that perhaps a little further? Whether the city is lacking an ordinance to protect us from having to pay for other people's expenses?
I mean, this is the first I'm hearing of this issue. I have not looked at what ordinances we have on the books, whether we have one that covers this. I mean, I'm certainly willing to do that.
I will tell you this has maybe occurred only a couple times over the years. And both of those times being that it was an entity such as South Jersey Gas who did in fact pay for any monies that had to be taken out for review. But this one here, maybe I'm wrong, but this is the first that I'm seeing it. And with that being said, if that's the case, I think we need to have an ordinance that would say that the applicant or whoever is looking for the oversight of review would be responsible for any outside costs that are associated with it.
I probably don't understand the issue. What exactly are we being asked to do?
Mr. Fralinger, I'm going to ask you to pick up where I may not have made myself clear enough.
Sure. There was an email and I guess a packet that was sent to the city from the campsite. I don't have the name in front of me, but the one that's located on the intersection of Beach and 12th. And I think that's the one. I'm not sure, but there was a campsite that provided documentation. I didn't receive the packet. However, in preparation for tonight, there was a Dropbox and some information in there. And it appears what they're looking for is that since they are making improvements, it's my understanding to maybe an existing septic system, they exceed the flows that would be reviewed by the county health department, which is over 2,000 gallons per day. And I believe that's what's triggering the DEP review and the applicant to file a treatment works application, the DEP for the review. As part of that application, there is a form, I believe it's the WQ003 form. And in that form, there's a section that that requires a consent to the application from the governing body. In most instances where this is required, there's a MUA or a utility authority that would sign off on this as the governing body. But in this case, I believe it's going to be deferred to city council. And they're just looking for, I guess, an acknowledgement that you're aware of this and you're signing off and stating that the subject parcel is in compliance with all your municipal regulations and ordinance. So I don't know if this plan was subject to a site plan, if there's a resolution, if there's any violations, but essentially, I don't think when I looked into this further, there's not a review that would be required from our office to look at any engineering plans, designs, or any of their calculations, but a sign off from the council that you acknowledge this, at the consent, you acknowledge this application is being made to the DEP, and you're certifying that the site's in good standing with the city ordinance.
That would still have to be some review on your part there, Mr. Fallinger, wouldn't you say? I mean, no member of council has that authority or has that insight knowledge about what they're in compliance of or what they're not.
Wouldn't
We're
that
not
be,
professionals.
wouldn't that be a review by the land use compliance officer?
That's a possibility. That's a very good possibility. But even still, I mean, we're talking some technical stuff here, wouldn't you say, Randy? That's
I think what Mr. Fralinger just described is not an engineering analysis. I think it's simply that there are no known violations either of municipal ordinances or site plan requirements, and that you're aware that the application is being made. And that's
they do have an existing campground over there that they've been licensed each year, which basically means, yes, they are in compliance and there is no standing issues with them. So
I don't think there's any review that's required then. If you've determined annually that they're in compliance with whatever regulations municipally we impose on them, and you're aware that they're making the application, I think part of that also involves, and Mr. Freelander can correct me if I'm wrong, it also involves a certification that there's no public sewer or water available to the property also.
there is no public water or sewer there. That's all septic and well.
I think that's what part of the certification is, that there is no available public facilities. So it's that they're in compliance with zoning, and your zoning officer should know that. It's that you're aware of the application and that there's no other available source of facilities. I don't think that requires an engineering review.
Judd, I would refer.
I don't know if there's a copy in the packet, but that form, the language in the form is all, I believe, in section A3, where they're asking the council to sign off on. And there's the statement that is outlined there regarding compliance with the municipal ordinance.
Okay. All right. And then we have the South Jersey Gas line Route 50 issue there. As probably most of us have seen, the South Jersey Gas is making some improvements to increase the capacity for what they're doing for the transportation of the gas. So do you have anything further you want to say on that, Mike, or not really?
No, I'm not aware. I haven't received anything regarding this, so I don't have any correspondence, or I'm not exactly in the loop on this.
Well, been seeing what they're doing. I mean, they're out there, making improvements down Route 50. Obviously, they have the review of the DOT of what they're doing, so they can't do anything without the DOT's approval because it's on the state highway. And I have seen DOT trucks that are out there, repeatedly. So I'm just going to assume that there's no action that needs to be taken from our, city council at this time. Okay,
Mayor.
Okay.
hold on.
Yeah, Mr.